Are you running GDP Portals? Ever wondered how to change a seal or a bearing? Well, today we're going to show you how to do it all. Let's get started. The first step is going to be to make sure that your box is totally drained of all the oil. Then we're going to go through and we're going to remove the 6 bolts securing the lid to the housing. So what we're going to do, we're going to remove all of them, except for just a few, and then we're going to put 3 turns, so they have 3 threads into the housing, just like that. Then we're going to take a rubber mallet, and we're going to hit down on these bolts while picking up on the portal by the output shaft. That's going to separate the lid from the housing. Then you're just going to go ahead and remove your bolts completely. And grab a hold of the lid, separate the lid from the housing, and we're going to go through and remove all the gears, set them aside for the time being. Then you'll want to remove this hub from the idler gear. We're just going to go ahead and grab a hold of our gasket, pull it out as well. We won't be reusing that. Then we're going to head over to the press. We're going to press our output shaft out of the lid. Whenever you're setting the portal lid up in the press, you want to make sure that you have something that sits right here on the edge of the bearing. That way the output shaft can push through it. Make sure you get it lined up good and straight. Then we're just going to grab something to sit down on top of the shaft. You want to make sure you don't press directly on the shaft. And we're just going to start pressing the shaft out. Once it's all the way out, we're going to remove the lid from the press, and then we're going to head back over to the table. Then we're going to go ahead and remove both of our seals that are on our lid. You can take a pick and slide it up underneath the seal, then just pry it straight out. Same way for this seal right here. And once you bend that seal, you can just pull it right up out of there, just like that. And we're going to head over here to the housing side and remove this seal as well. Just going to take the pick, put it in there, and pry straight up, and the seal will come right out. So now what we're going to do is we're going to start removing the bearings. The best way we found to do this is to get 2 small pieces of wood or anything that elevates the box up off of your table, and it keeps it level. That way these bearings will come right out. So we're going to go ahead and put some gloves on here. And there's a few different ways of doing this. You can get a blind bearing puller and you can pull the bearings out that way, or you can do it the way that we're going to be doing it today, and that's by using a torch. So what we're going to do, we're just going to heat around the bearing. We don't want to heat directly down, because what that's going to do, it's going to expand that bearing and they're not going to want to come out very easily. So we're going to start with this center idler gear bearing here. We're just going to heat right around it. Once we've got it good and hot, we're going to grab each side of the portal box and then just slam it straight down onto our blocks of wood. And sometimes you'll have that where 2 bearings will come out at once. That's perfectly fine. That's actually beneficial for you. That means you don't have to heat the other portion of it. So we had our top bearing as well as the middle bearing come out. Now we're going to go ahead and heat up this bottom bearing and get it out. We've got it good and hot. We're just going to grab a hold of the housing and knock our bearing straight out. Then we're going to take our housing portion of the portal, set it aside for the time being. We're going to grab the lid side now. And the lid side's a little bit different. You can actually press these bearings out in the press. Yeah, you can heat it up. Either way you want to do it. Today we're going to show you how to heat it up. So we know there's a bearing here, and then a bearing here. And like you seen last time, we got 2 bearings at once, so we're going to try to get this bearing as well as this bearing at the same time here. Once we got it good and hot, we're just going to take our box, knock it straight out. It looks like this one over here is about to come out as well. This one right here is about to come out, so we're just going to go ahead and hit it. Get it laid like this. There we go, there's all 3 bearings out. Now we're going to let these cool down and we're going to head over to the press and start pressing in our new bearings. Now that we're over to the press, we're working on the lid side. We're going to be pressing in the thrust bearing first. When pressing in our bearings, you want to make sure that you find something that sits on the inner race or the inner portion of the bearing perfectly. So we have a socket that fits it good, and this socket is a 36mm socket. So we're going to set it up just like that. But first we're going to take the bearing and get it sat down straight. That way it presses straight down. So we have it pretty good and straight there. We're going to lay it up on something solid, the whole lid. We're going to take our socket and then something to push against the socket. And we're going to start pressing it down in. So we're going to press it down in until it fully seats. When it's fully seated, the bearing will barely be sticking up out of the housing. It'll almost be flush. And we're going to do the same process for the rest of the 2 bearings here. So we're just going to take the bearing, get it started straight. Get our socket. Something to help us push it down. With this bearing, we may take another piece. We're going to take this little piece of pipe right here just to help us so we don't run out of stroke on our press. You just want to make sure the bearing goes down in there to where it's almost flush. We're going to do the same thing with this last bearing. Make sure that we get it lined up good. Then while we're already here, we're going to go ahead and press our output shaft back in. Just going to make sure that the output shaft goes just like this. We're going to lay something on top of the shaft. That way we're not pressing directly off of the shaft. Get it nice and centered. And we're just going to press it all the way in. Just going to make sure it's fully seated. And we'll just have just a little bit of gap there before it touches the bearing. You just want to spin it. So we're going to take our lid and sit it back on the table, and we're going to grab our housing. Same process, just make sure you get them lined up nice and straight. Gonna press it right in. We're gonna get our other bearing started in there straight. That one's fully seated. Get our last bearing started in the housing straight. Now we have all our bearings in, we're gonna head back on over to the table. Now that we have all our bearings installed, we're gonna go ahead and start reinstalling our gears. We're gonna start with the idler gear hub. It doesn't matter which way you install it to it. You're just gonna make sure that it goes right down into the idler gear bearing. A lot of times it'll go in right by hand. If you can't get it to go in by hand, make sure you have it lined up straight and then hit it square, straight down into the bearing. Just like that. Then we're gonna grab our idler gear. It doesn't matter which way it's flipped. Just go ahead and make sure it lines up with the splines. Sit right in there. Then we're gonna get our drive gear. This is the only gear that it really matters which way that you install it. You're gonna make sure that the beveled side is facing up towards you. And we're gonna line it up with the gear as well as the bearing. And just slide it right down in there just like that. And we're gonna take our drive gear, put it in just like this. All right, now we're gonna grab a little bit of grease. And just take some, put it on your finger. And all the way around where the gasket goes for the O-ring seal, we're just gonna kind of coat it. And we'll come through and we'll wipe the excess off. You just want to make sure that it gets down into the groove where that seal is going to go. This is going to help the seal stay in place when you go to install it. The biggest thing is just try to keep it off the gears and out of the inside of the box. If it does get down in there, it's not that big a deal. You'll just want to wipe it out. Just going to go all the way around. Get a nice little coat down in the groove. Better if you pack it up on your finger, just about like that, and then just kind of slowly work it. It'll work itself into that groove a little bit easier there for you. Make sure you go all the way around. It doesn't have to be a ton. Then we're just going to go back through, wipe all this excess off. Like I said, it's okay if there is some excess. You just don't want big gobs of grease. Wipe my hands off, and then we're going to grab the O-ring seal. Now, as you can see, if you kind of lay it up there, you can tell how it's going to go. You just want to go through, make sure this seal's fully seated all the way around the groove. That's what that grease is for. Otherwise, it'll kind of want to pop out of there on you, and potentially when you go to put the box together, it could not be in the proper location. And any of that excess grease that's going to pop up out of there, out of the groove, just go through and just kind of wipe the seal down with it. It's not going to hurt a single thing. We want to make sure our dowels are still installed. Sometimes whenever you're hitting the housing down to get the bearings out, the dowels will come out, but ours didn't. So we're good to go. We're going to go ahead and take the lid, get it lined up with the drive gear. The key to getting it to go together, just kind of wiggle the drive gear, make sure it's in there straight. Then you're just going to take your rubber mallet, start up here at the top with your left hand, make sure you're pushing down. And it'll just drop right into place. Just go ahead and put a couple bolts in it. We're not gonna really fully tighten any of them. We're just gonna run them down just until they touch. So we got our box assembled. We just wanna grab the output shaft and make sure it spins freely all the way around. We're gonna grab the 3 seals that are in the rebuild kit. What I like to do is just take a little bit of grease, not much at all, and just go around the outside of the seal. And then as well on the inside of the seal. Just take it and you just want to pack it in there. Once you got a good coat of grease on it, you're going to make sure that the open side is facing down. We're just going to slide it right into place here. If you get it lined up straight, a lot of times you can get it started with your hands. That one's pretty straight, but it isn't wanting to go in by hand, so we're just going to take a rubber mallet, get it down in there flush, and then we're going to take our flat punch. We're just going to go around the whole seal. Then we're going to make sure that the seal is all the way seated down and the top of the drive gear should be sticking out just a little bit here, just like that. And we're going to do the same thing with the grease on the rest of the 2 seals here. So just get a good even coat on the inside as well as the outside of the seal. Then we're going to slide it down over top of the output shaft. Get it good and started. Then we're going to grab our flat punch. Go all the way around, make sure it's fully seated. Then we're going to roll the box over to the back side. We're going to install this seal. We're going to get some grease on it first. Make sure the open side goes down. Get it up there as flat as you possibly can. And you're going to take your rubber mallet. Go around. Tap it in as far as it'll go with the mallet. And you're going to take your punch, your flat punch, make sure it's fully seated. Go through and torque all 6 of these bolts to 20 foot-pounds, then reinstall it to your machine. After reinstalling the portal onto your machine, you want to make sure that your drain plug is tight. Fill the portal box up with 80-90 gear oil until the oil has a good stream running out of the fill hole. Reinstall the fill plug and you're ready to ride. And that's how super easy it is to rebuild an 8-inch portal. For more information on these portals or any of SuperATV's great products, feel free to give us a call at 855-743-3427 or check us out online at superatv.com. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.